we did have a little bit of technical issues, just trying to get the presentation in the correct format and things, so I do apologise. So good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the webinar on the National Fire and Rescue Solution for Apprenticeships. Just to introduce myself, I'm Charlotte Kennett. I'm the category buyer at YPO. So I kind of run the apprenticeship framework in place for on a national basis across all sectors. With me I have Tracy. So Tracy is the National Fire Chiefs Council category lead for professional services. We also have Karen, and she's the procurement officer at Cambridge. Sorry, Tracy is from Cambridge Fire and Rescue as well. And also with us, we've got Penny Newton from National Fire Chiefs Council team. And Penny is the project manager for apprenticeships and on call. On today's webinar, we're going to talk about the background and how this has all come about, what the aim is and what we're trying to achieve, what we have done so far, the challenges we are facing within the market, the challenge we're also facing as a sector, the partnership with YPO. Also, we're going to have Penny talking from NFCC, the YPO framework and how it works, and then we're going to have time for questions and suggestions at the end as well. So I'm just going to go through some housekeeping. So you've all joined this webinar in a listening mode only. However, you do have access to type questions throughout the webinar. We will go through some of the questions at the end, and if you don't, we will create a Q&A document and share it with everyone, so everyone's got access to all the different questions as well. So I'm now going to pass you on to Tracy, who's going to talk through the partnership and the solution we are aiming to achieve.
Hi, so the National Fire Chiefs Council Apprenticeship Board and the Apprenticeship Forum, which provides support to many fire and rescue services in the UK, and Penny's going to come on and talk to you about that in a little bit more detail later, are keen to ensure that we have an approved procurement framework for apprenticeship training providers to be established to include all required fire and rescue apprenticeship standards, which will enable fire and rescue services to utilise apprentice levy funds for all apprenticeship types. However, that said, we are only looking at fire-specific apprenticeships for the purpose of this framework at the moment. So the board are keen to have in place a framework which provides UK-wide, regional and local opportunities, ease of appointment with standard templates and guidance for fire and rescue services to use, and to support collaboration where it is appropriate. The board recently agreed to work with YPO, who are in a position to provide a fluid, dynamic framework, who have the resources and the infrastructure required to support us. Therefore, just to reiterate, the focus of this framework is to ensure fit-for-purpose arrangements with scope to achieve economies of scale and interoperability opportunities for fire and rescue services. The scope of this framework is for fire-specific apprenticeships, which covers Level 3, Operational Firefighter, which is currently available but is being reviewed, Emergency Service Contact Handler, which is also available, Business Fire Safety Advisor, which is available, and Level 3 Community Fire Safety Advisor, which is also available. The Level 4 Fire Safety Inspector has recently been approved, and that's now too currently available. Level 6 Fire Engineer degree level is not yet available. We're looking to encourage the appointment of innovative suppliers who can build on the way in which training has previously been delivered by the use of technology, innovative solutions to support learning styles, for example, dyslexia, whilst creating an environment that encourages suppliers to collaborate with one another and work closely with the fire sector to share best practice, where possible standardised training content to enable cost reductions, improve efficiencies and the quality of training being delivered. Training providers will be expected to put the needs of the apprentices at the heart of everything that they do. The board are keen to have arrangements in place for open courses that are standardised as far as is reasonably practicable, to ensure that apprentices from different services can attend a course, recognising that some fire and rescue services won't always be able to fill a cohort, and to enable apprentices to finish training should they for any reason be unable to complete a course. To be on the framework, providers must be on the register of apprenticeship training providers, and Charlotte will talk more about how this is assured, as well as ensuring they have an Ofsted rating of 1 or 2. At this point, I would like to point out that whilst we are working closely with YPO, this is very much being sector driven, and anything which is developed will sit within the sector and can be shared and used for developing your requirements. I will also be working with Crown Commercial to share any sector or market information in order for them to progress their framework. So what have we done so far? We've sent out a survey to Fire and Rescue Service to understand their requirements, the likely number of apprenticeships they will be proposing, their current arrangements, and this has gone out on workplace to procurement, L&D, training and HR. We will be sending out a questionnaire to suppliers in the near future to understand their capacity, their arrangements, as well as gauging their interest in coming onto the frameworks, along with an understanding of their challenges and concerns with the Trailblazer apprenticeships. We held an initial supplier engagement event in January, and the suppliers which attended were open and honest about their concerns and the opportunities they saw. But we need to reach out to the wider market, which is why we've devised a subsequent questionnaire. We're then looking to hold a fire sector engagement event to further understand your requirements, your priorities, the numbers, the timeframes, and discuss any areas that we are looking to include in the framework. And we hope to jointly develop the requirements with you, hopefully finding some middle ground whilst being realistic that one size won't fit all. But what we're trying to do is get to some core requirements, specifications and terms and conditions. We would then be looking to work with a cross-section of stakeholders made up of employee providers, subcontractors, fire and rescue services who will be providing just to their own personnel, and those looking to utilise the framework, to hopefully inform the way that we move forward and subsequently join us at a supplier engagement event. At the next supplier engagement event, we hope to be in a position to share our progress with potential providers, seek their feedback and provide guidance as how they can come onto the framework. The framework will have service level agreements in place, standard for fire and rescue services to use, together with performance indicators that can be utilised by fire and rescue services calling off from the framework, and should cover, but not limited to, areas such as welfare, professional behaviour, support for underperforming students and those who may be disadvantaged learners, pass rates, mode of delivery, quality, cost, etc. The appointed framework provider should be able to evidence how these agreed standards, SLAs and key performance indicators could be incorporated into the procurement framework terms and conditions, and how fire and rescue services could escalate any areas of concern that are not addressed and or rectified by the supplier. We've done some engagement, and the perceived challenges that as far as the market go are that we are struggling to attract suppliers to deliver apprenticeships, struggling to attract suppliers onto the framework who are in a position to deliver apprenticeships. All suppliers work independently, and for phase 2 of operational firefighters specifically, we need providers to work closer together in relation to the subsequent training and associated training. From the discussions that we have had with providers, they currently aren't aware of the sector requirements and which apprenticeships are of interest or a priority for the sector, the likely number of apprenticeships coming through. Being a training provider on the Trailblazer standards requires a lot of administrative burden on them, and that has come through in some of the discussions we've had with them. Those training providers who are in a position to deliver and are on the framework may have difficulty keeping up with demand if the numbers of apprenticeships increase. So we do need to encourage more suppliers onto the frameworks. There are a distinct lack of providers for emergency service contact handler, community safety advisor and business fire safety advisor, again due to uncertainty of numbers and the effort in setting up the courses. So we will be driving to try and attract more suppliers. And one of the other areas was Ofsted, and the administration is a huge burden for the market. We have done some engagement with the sector, and some of the perceived issues are there is a possible lack of understanding still around the levy arrangements, a lack of understanding of the Trailblazer standards, the likely number of fire and rescue services who would utilise the framework, and whether fire and rescue services would want open courses. We're trying to establish what their current arrangements are and what they want to do moving forward, or any gaps in their current arrangements. Differing requirements across the sector could be an issue, as well as the administrative burden for fire and rescue services administering the apprenticeships and using the frameworks, and we're looking to minimise that as much as possible. Culturally, it is different. It is a change in the way that we've delivered training in the past. The requirement for behavioural evidence is another cultural change, has been reflected in the recent HMI report. If you've seen it, much more emphasis is being placed on behaviours and recording and evidencing such. Evidence recording doesn't always align with service competency recording systems, and again that's been something that's been mentioned to us. That said, most of this is in relation to operational firefighter, as we haven't had many go through in any of the other areas, and I'm sure as we progress many more issues may come to light over the coming weeks. So what are we doing with YPO? They're supporting us with engagement events, working with us to develop specifications, requirements and standard contract terms, developing a dedicated lot and separate area on their website, developing guidance on the website, which will be split into two areas, one being a learning area and one being a resource area with documents and guidance. So hopefully there'll be some information on there about the standards and about the levy. Provision of a speak to the team and key stakeholder directory. We're looking to put out regular videos and webinars, and they will be running and administering the framework for us. So the key issue is that we want to be in a position to provide a multi-supply framework that enables new entrants to come onto the framework, that doesn't prohibit fire and rescue services joining and meets the need of the market and the sector, and enables, where possible, interoperability and sustainability. As I said, this is very much sector-led, and Penny's going to talk to you about the project from the NFCC perspective, and then Charlotte is going to come on and talk more about the framework in its current format and the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Just a quick overview really of what we're doing in the project at the moment. The apprenticeship project, as some of you will be aware, has been running now for 2 years plus. Apprenticeships are still seen as key to ensuring the consistency to training in all areas of the fire service. Within the project, we're working closely with the Education Skills Funding Agency to ensure the fire service are getting the best from the apprenticeships that we can. Recently, we gained an interpretation of the funding rules, which allows for on-call firefighters to use the operational firefighter apprenticeship. So we're training all of our staff to the same consistency. Currently, we have a review of the operational firefighter standard taking place. There was a little bit of an issue with the endpoint assessment back in October, which with the Institute for Apprenticeships, we had a minor amendment completed. Now we're reviewing the whole standard just to make sure after 2 years in, it's now fit for purpose for everybody. So there are a few changes going on there at the moment, but nothing major. It will still happen. The last thing that I've got to say to you is we have an apprenticeship forum on the 27th of February taking place in London. Charlotte will be there from YPO, so if any of you have any questions for that, you will have an opportunity to talk directly to Charlotte. Thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, thank you, Penny. So yeah, I'll be at the forum next week, so it'd be great to see as many of you as possible. And obviously, anything that you have any questions from today, obviously we can answer some at the end of the webinar, but I'll also be there to answer any questions as well, one-on-one, so it might be a little bit easier for you. So yeah, the framework went live back in August 2018, and originally we put the framework period as the 1st of August to the 31st of July 2020. Now, we've not seen enough change within the market to re-procure the framework. So just to make sure, I'm talking about a procurement framework and not an apprenticeship framework. But yeah, so we kind of extended, we've got an extension to, opportunity of 2 times 12 months, and the likelihood of us taking that is absolutely, we'll be taking that until July 2022. That seems ages off, but it's probably not. And then obviously the framework is available for all public sector organisations. Obviously emergency services fits within that as well. So I'm just going to go through the structure of the framework. It looks huge, it is huge, but it's not that scary once I'll go into detail of that. So at the top we have the overarching framework, and within that we've split it down into 11 regions, and then within each region there is a route which we have copied the Institute for Apprenticeships, and then within each route there is the standard, and then underneath the standards a provider can bid against the standards they would like to deliver. So the regions will be fixed for the duration of the framework. So they'll, no matter what, for the next 2 years of when it's going to be live for, they will be stuck. And if relevant, new routes will be amended in line with the Institute for Apprenticeship list as well. Each quarter, new standards will be added as per the Institute for Apprenticeship. So obviously you've got the fire engineer coming on, it's currently in proposal, that will be added to the framework as and when it is approved for delivery. And then each quarter, providers will be able to bid for all current and new standards. And I know some fire organisations are now becoming main providers. We do want you on there if you can deliver, you know, to other fire and rescue organisations. It would be good to see, and it opens new entrants to the market. The list of providers for each standard will evolve throughout the duration of the framework, so it will keep evolving and it will keep getting bigger. I know overall at the moment we have 200 providers on board, but that's for the 517 standards that are available on the Institute for Apprenticeship website. So the apprenticeship timetable, now this is key as kind of for you and for providers. So as and when providers come on board and want to deliver a standard, they will suit around these timetables. So we're currently in round 8, and the next deadline for submissions is the 1st of March 2020. So all providers will have to get their tenders in by that deadline, and we'll make sure that they can deliver that standard for each specific one. And then the next phase is obviously round 9. So we add all new standards 30 days before the end of the deadline. So we'll add all the new standards on the 1st of May 2020, ready for the tender response deadline of the 1st of June 2020. So we'll keep evolving, and we've got the full timetable available for you to see and providers to see. So you can tell providers as and when they bid. And if you know any providers, tell them now that the next deadline is the 1st of March, and absolutely we can get them on board as much as possible. We also know that it's kind of a new market for providers, and obviously some fire and rescue to put in a bid. So we will give you help and guidance throughout that, to make sure that you're putting in the best possible and that the framework is suitable for you. So the fire and rescue specific standards. Now, we currently have on level 3 operational firefighter 2 providers, which is Babcock and Capita. Now, as we said earlier, there is a challenge within the market, and we know of other providers within the market wanting to deliver on delivering the standard. So we're trying to, as much as possible to understand those challenges, to make sure that it doesn't come as a burden to them actually delivering it going forward. Emergency service contact handler. So we have got one provider on the YPO framework, which is Wakefield College, but we understand, yet again, that's probably, they can just deliver within the Yorkshire and Humber region. However, we have identified 2 other organisations who deliver this standard as well. And I think for them, it's all about the challenges in, they don't know how many numbers they're going to get out the fire and rescue. And I know obviously emergency services contact handler can be across the blue light as well. So we just want to understand a little bit more about the emergency service contact handler and how many you would be willing to put on the apprenticeship. So business fire safety advisor, we've currently got no providers on the framework and within the market that we can find either. So if you do know any provider out there, that would be great to get your feedback and we can have the conversations from our side. Same as well, community safety advisor. So there is no current providers on our framework. And we have identified one provider within the market. And yet again, it's probably the same reason. They don't know how many they're actually going to get through this particular standard. So financially for them, it's quite interesting and would be good to understand your numbers going through it. Fire safety inspector. So yet again, there's no current providers on our framework and within the market that we can find. But it would be yet again good to understand if there is anybody that you do know. And then obviously the level 6 fire engineer is still in development, but as and when it does come on board, it will be available via the YPO framework, so that anyone who may know of a provider can get in touch with us and we can talk them through that steps as well. So from kind of a procurement point of view in the framework structure, we've done a specification that's overarching for the whole of the procurement framework. And then within each specific standard, we've created a specification relevant to that. Now, obviously, not all specifications will fit all, and that's what we've mentioned earlier. And we are starting to develop a specification for the operational firefighter especially. And you will just pick and choose elements of the specification that is relevant to you. So as much as information as you can possibly give us, we can understand specifications from all national fire and rescue services. If we don't, obviously you can add that into your specification, but we want to try and make it easier for you just to kind of add in and not forget anything that may be crucial to your organisation. So the quality assessment, obviously we want to make sure that they're all quality assessed and everything via the framework. So all generic assessment is carried out by the framework, so the insurance checks, health and safety certificates, also the financial checks. We do realise that they are carried out by the SFA, but we just do that double check just in case. Also, all providers must be on the ROAC register, and they must be able to deliver as a main point provider, supporting provider, or an employee provider, one of the 3. And yeah, so it is key that we do that checks and everything to make sure that they are registered on there as well. So YPO also decided to create some criteria that would help you to make a more effective decision when looking out to carry out your direct award and further competition. So the sub-criteria can filter providers on each standard based on the below criteria. So obviously, Tracy mentioned earlier about the grading of 1 or 2. That can be done via our framework, and you only need to take the providers to further competition if that's what you're wanting to do, that have an Ofsted rating of 1 or 2 or good or outstanding. And those other areas is also where you can do the filters. So actually, you're a customer in London, you would filter it so that the provider can deliver in the London region as well. So contract authorities would then only need to carry out the direct award for the competition based on the providers that meet their sub-criteria. So don't worry about, you know, and probably this is never going to be the case, but if there's 5 providers that you're going to have to take all of them through to further competition, it might be that two of them providers have only got an Ofsted rating of good or outstanding. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So how to procure through the framework. So there is the ability to do a direct award. So basically that means that you know what provider you want to award to already. And the reason being is we want to make it as easy as possible for you. However, if you don't know what provider you want as your provider, you will do a further competition. And you can redo your specification and go out to tender with a couple of questions that you may have. Now, the reason why you might have to procure this procure apprenticeship levy is because it does go above and will go above the threshold that is being set. So all national fire and rescue organisations will need to make sure that it's a compliant route to market when doing their contract for apprenticeship levy. So we do need to make sure that it is through either doing your own tender or it's through a procurement framework like the YPO one. So the framework terms and conditions. So we went through, Tracy mentioned about the framework terms and conditions, and obviously for different fire and rescue organisations, it might be that you need to add on different things. Now just to give you an understanding, so there is the framework terms and conditions which are agreed by all providers, and so that is between YPO and the provider. Then there's the call of terms and conditions which are agreed between yourselves and the provider. Now these can be amended to meet your requirements, and this is what we're aiming to do. And you can insert like any additional terms and conditions that you may want to. So for example, we're going to, again, like the specification element of it, we're going to make sure that there's a list of add-ons which you can add in or remove based on your requirements. So it's really good to understand your, you know, what you struggle with or what you currently put in the terms and conditions between you and the provider, so we can make sure that that's all incorporated in the documentation that we will be sending over at a later stage. And then to finalise the contract, there's something called an order form. Now I've just put that in there because actually that is the contract that will be signed at the end, and we will send guidance documents and anything that you may need, obviously to fill in this information. YPO are always going to be there, and we're always going to be making sure that you've done your contract in the correct way with everything that you want to be involved in that. So I think that's kind of it from us. However, if you do have any questions, what we will be doing is just collating them in a minute, and then we'll answer back any questions that we may have. Is that all right?
Awesome.
Okay, so we have had a question, which is how do our current providers get onto the YPO framework? So if they want to get in contact with me, Charlotte from YPO, I will go through obviously the steps with them through the e-tendering portal. We do use Proactive, which you may be aware of, and what I'll do is I'll go through with the provider what steps they need to take. So after this webinar, what I'll do is I'll make sure that an email address goes out, which will be Apprenticeships with an S at the end at ypo.co.uk. And obviously after this this webinar, we'll make sure that the questions that have been answered go out as well, along with that, along with the slides if you would like them as well. So my email will be on there, and we'll make sure that the provider can try and get on board the YPO framework. And that's really positive news from what we've heard today about the challenges within the market. So that's great. Thank you. Okay, another question. So does the framework also cover generic business apprenticeships? Yes, it absolutely does. From a YPO side, now it won't be involved in the partnership that we are creating. However, it covers all the ones available to deliver on the Institute for Apprenticeships website. Yeah, as well. So, do we have to use providers who are on the framework if they don't want to join? So it's completely up to you. Like, if you want to use the framework, yes, they will have to join the YPO procurement framework. We just do that upfront check of making sure that everything's okay, and then it actually comes through as a compliant route to market. If you went and did kind of your own tender, they could be part of that. But yes, they do need to be a provider on the YPO framework. So there's quite a few questions coming through now. So what I think we'll do is, some of the questions are quite lengthy, and what we'll do is we'll obviously record what we've got from the questions and go from there. I think it'd be quite good to obviously issue the questions out as well. But I hope you've all found it very useful today, and hopefully, yeah, from there we'll be able to advise going forward. So thank you so much for today. It's been really good. I hope you've enjoyed it, and yeah, we'll send out emails and anything else that you may have as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.